The 10th season of Consider This is brought to you in part by From the Top, a national program showcasing the musical talents of young people. From the Top can be heard on KVNO Classical 90.7 each Saturday at 6 p.m.
Consider This, a program of issues and information behind today's news. Once again, from the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha, here is your host, Andrea McMaster.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this edition of Consider This. Albert Einstein, C.S. Lewis, John Quincy Adams, what did these three men have in common? They were all homeschooled. Well, years since these men went to school, home education is becoming more and more popular. Students going into school in their own home instead of traditional classrooms. Currently, there are more than 5,600 students of all ages home educated in Nebraska. This is a 13% increase from 2 years ago. Why are more and more families deciding to homeschool their children? And what are some concerns for parents who are choosing this route? What are the advantages and disadvantages of home education? We'll explore some of these issues on this week's Consider This. We have three guests with us today. I'm going to begin by introducing Deb Badir, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
And Deb is with the Nebraska Christian Home Educators Association. We're going to hear more about that association in a little bit, but next I want to introduce Rachel Paul. Thank you for being here too. One of our homeschooled students, one of two that's here today to discuss what it's like to be a home educated student, and Sean Badir, Deb's son. So both high school students. Okay, glad to have you, all three of you, with us today. Before we get started in talking more broadly about home education in Nebraska, I wanted you, Deb, just to share a little bit of your personal story about why you decided the home education route for your children.
Well, we picked home education 21 years ago, believe it or not, when our oldest was about 6. And we chose it for a couple of reasons. One primarily being wanting to have that opportunity to teach religious values and Christian principles within the school setting, as used to be done even in our public education system if you go back far enough. But we found that very, very important. And we had a son who was very gifted at that point, starting even in kindergarten, and we found that we wanted to give him that special one-on-one attention, let him accelerate where he could and hang back where he needed to. And so it gave us both options.
Okay. And so Sean's not the first child of yours to be home educated?
No.
Okay.
My husband and I have 8 children, and they range in age from 27 to age 7. And we have graduated 4 of them from home education at this point, our own school called Badir Christian School.
So you're going to be busy for a while.
I'm going to be busy quite a bit longer, yes.
Okay, well, and it's a process for you too, in continuing to educate yourself with a new curriculum coming out all the time.
It is. It is. It's a constantly evolving situation, if you will, with curriculums improving and changing, and now there are DVD curriculums and video and computer curriculums that I didn't have 21 years ago. So yeah, it's a constant learning process for me, which I enjoy, as well as for the students.
Which I know, and we'll talk a little bit more detailed at the end of the show about this too, but which can be overwhelming for parents in thinking about home education.
Yes.
How in the world am I going to teach calculus when that was a class that I barely excelled in school? How am I going to teach that to a high school student where they can thrive? And I'm sure that that's been something that you've thought about along the way.
Oh, it is. And so, of course, it's easier for me to teach the things that I like and was good at. But when I get into something that's really an area that's difficult for me, or, calculus I didn't take, for example, and I have a student who's going to need calculus soon, I'm going to be using the resources available, which are many now. I could get another homeschool parent who was accelerated in math, maybe graduated with a PhD in math. I can ask them to tutor my child. I can go to an online course. I can go to a video curriculum, calculus edition, and all that's been developing in the last 10 to 15 years as well. So it's really helping us to be able to manage high school now in a way that's easier and better for the student and the teacher.
It is a full-time job for you,
yes,
but you don't necessarily have to build in the hours of an 8 to 3 o'clock school day, for instance. If need be, for your family situations, whatever that might be, a family could decide that school is 6 to 8 o'clock at night.
Absolutely.
A couple of hours.
Oh, that's very insightful of you, because it is hard for us to think outside of the box, that we all grew up in initially. But that's very true. if we get distracted with fun opportunities, and the schoolwork isn't done, then we can do that this evening, or we can do that on a weekend. Not that that's the most fun, but it can be squeezed in. And if we have families where both parents are working, it's even possible to home educate by using that kind of an idea where you school during the hours you're home. They might not be the traditional school hours, but you put school where it fits your family the best.
Okay. Well, now we're going to get to our homeschool students. This is where we truly see what it's like. Rachel, did your parents make the decision for you? Was it when you were really young, or was this a decision that was made kind of together?
I think it was made, I'm in the middle of kids, so when my oldest sibling, I think part of it was they saw the needs. Homeschooling, it really made it easier for them, from talking with them, made it easier for them to, as you said, to see what she needed to work on. Maybe there's something where it was a little bit slower. They could one-on-one with her, which in that sense then they could help her in the area she was good with and work with her specifically instead of having a group setting where you can't associate with each kid's special needs. And it started way back. I mean, my oldest sister, she's 21 now, but it started with her then when they started, just because I think that was partly that, and they wanted to control what she was able to take, to what she took in. Mm-hmm. Therefore, there were some things that when she was ready for him, then they could expose her. But instead of having everything coming at her at once, they could control what she learned. Therefore, in that sense then, if there was something she wasn't ready for yet, they could make sure that she was ready for them when they came. Mm-hmm.
So, do you enjoy being homeschooled?
Definitely.
Okay.
Yes,
you
very
would
much so.
You would say that this would be something, if a family is considering, that you would recommend?
Very much so, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Sean, how would you answer that question?
Well, first of all, I don't know that we can be held to the expectations of someone like C.S. Lewis or Albert Einstein per se. But, as far as homeschooling, if I was to recommend it to someone, I definitely would. Something that might be seen as a disadvantage, but could also be seen as an advantage, is one thing with homeschooling is that it requires much diligence, not only on the part of the student to get their work done, as they are held responsible, but for the teachers as well. If, for instance, big families like we have, different parents, or the parents are held to all these different grades for all the different children, and it is diligence that becomes rather difficult. Not that it's not difficult as well in the public school setting, but it's also difficult, it's even more, I would say, for the homeschool student, especially as they get into high school, to get their things done. But that could also be seen as an advantage, because that's something that you can learn upon. That will be something that's going to be valuable to you later on in life.
So you have to be very disciplined, in other words, because you're going to school in an environment where, everything fun to you is around. Like anything that's yours, your bedroom is down the hallway, and or maybe you go do a lot of your work in your bedroom.
Or oftentimes I am doing it in my bedroom.
Okay, and so you've probably got all of your fun things around, be it video games or whatever you might have. That could be, I'm going to just play this for a while. So,
a distraction?
A distraction, yeah. But you have to stay very disciplined.
Yeah. But also I've learned a lot on that, and I believe that'll help me later on. Not that I've perfected this in any way, which I haven't. I could still have a lot to learn. But I think it's helped me a lot to have to go do things on my own, beyond even homework itself, to even have to go and whether it's DVD homework that I have to go do that, watch that, or homework itself in the paperwork.
Okay.
Going and getting all my subjects done each day.
Well, that being said, do you think that the home education is not for some students, not for some personalities?
Now that I'm not sure, because another one of the advantages I see is, as for the parents, it's the parents' opportunity as well to influence their children, to things that they have taught, they can bring on to their children. Not that public school isn't right for some people, but I see how homeschooling can open up lots of opportunities, whereas the parents can teach their children, like Rachel was saying, how they know when things are ready to be taught to them. So I can see where certain instances would be needed for public school. But I see a lot of advantages and would definitely recommend homeschooling to others.
Okay. Well, I want to jump in here and talk a little bit about why some parents might choose to homeschool, and maybe you could add a couple to these, Deb, but it's for a lot of different reasons for different families. It may be because a child was bullied, and so the parents choose to pull a child out of school. The child might have started in a public school setting, and it may be because of the declining teacher-student ratio, which a lot of parents are concerned about, not that one-on-one attention in the schools. And concerns about some of the school infrastructure and maintenance and the lack of funding that a lot of schools have now to keep up with some of the resources, and also the prospect of school violence. We've heard a lot about this recently, and more home education has been in the news since 9/11, since the Columbine shootings, and the issue of school violence and parents then being concerned to send their kids out the door to school. Any other reasons that you would add to that, why parents choose to homeschool?
There are also, I guess I would say, the academic reasons, if you will, that you would train to get the student-teacher ratio, but in addition to that, to be able to specifically track maybe one gifted area and really help with that. As well, it's interesting, the list that you gave too, because as I go back 21 years ago, it was almost always for religious reasons that people would choose to homeschool, and now there is a varied list. People do come to it for different reasons, sometimes because the family travels, because there is a family business and they're all in a bus, or because dad moves with the military from place to place. So those would be some other reasons, but traditionally in this state it was always for religious reasons, wanting to build Christian values into the student.
Okay, a good time now to talk about your association that you represent today, the Nebraska Christian Home Education Association. Talk a little bit about its history. It's 20th anniversary this year.
Yes.
And talk a little bit how it got started and how it's really a support for families who do choose to home educate.
It started small, of course, as a support system for families, and it's grown into a very professionally done organization with really just a handful of devoted people running the scenes, behind the scenes, putting on a convention every year, a large convention for home educators in the state of Nebraska or any state that they'd want to come in from. And that involves about 600 home educators every year come in for that convention. This year we also started a program at the legislature, Home Educators Legislative Day, where they could meet their senators. We had the students come in and spend a day learning all about the legislative process in the unicameral and meeting senators and escorting to different rooms and learning what a hearing was, taking a tour of the Capitol. So it's expanded in that regard. That's just a couple of the main events that Christian Home Education Association performs.
Okay, I want to talk too about a couple of the benefits that you said that the NCHEA says is some of the positive reasons for homeschooling. You mentioned the parental involvement, and that might be for reasons that the parents want to be more involved in their students' everyday life, being able to see them more than if they were going to school. Religious freedom, and you've alluded to this a little bit, but can you share some more about sharing values, religious freedom, being concerned as a family to send your child to school?
Being concerned that over the last at least 20 years we've seen changes in the curriculum focus in school systems, private and public, and a little bit of changing of the way history is presented, maybe presenting history in a way that's not positive, even if we just talk about politically toward the United States, or not presenting our founding fathers in the same light that I learned them when I was in school. But most importantly, stripping out some foundational information about the foundations of this country, which were Judeo-Christian foundations, and stripping out the faith of the founding fathers, stripping out the faith in many of the different curriculums. That's been happening. And as parents see that more and more, see fights over posting the 10 Commandments, which was not an issue at all when I was in school. We sang hymns and carols at Christmas as well as doing Santa Claus. As that became, prayer was stripped from the schools, and talk of religion was stripped from the schools, and God was stripped from the textbooks, and history that reflected Christianity was stripped, people became more and more concerned. And so homeschooling is a way to restore what many of us did receive in public education 30, 40 years ago, if that makes sense. So that is part of the foundation, but also being able to pass our own sincere faith and beliefs, teach scripture as part of our curriculum, to teach the foundation and to have a sense of understanding about everything that's going on in the world around us by being able to incorporate the Bible as part of our curriculum.
Okay. And another reason is the high achievement that a lot of homeschool students see. I'm just going to share a couple statistics here so people can get a grasp on what we're talking about. But homeschooled students score in the range of 75 to 85% on most tests, while their peers in government education score in the range of 50 to 60 on those same tests. Home educated students score above average on SAT and ACT tests, and homeschoolers have been ruling the academic bees. We've seen this a little bit with the geography bee and the spelling bee recently, with a couple of homeschool students taking home the trophies there. But that all being said, I think that also comes from the families that homeschool children are coming from. There are those families that have usually those parents that are going to be very devoted in their child's education. So even if those children were going to public schools, if those parents have that same devotion, they probably are likely those students who are going to excel.
I agree. I don't think that homeschooled students are by nature smarter than anybody else. And we're not better teachers than anybody else per se. But it has to do with the devotion, the time put in. When I talk to somebody about beginning to homeschool, I tell them it's not just about doing school during certain hours of the day, but if you continue to pursue it, especially into high school level, it becomes a lifestyle change, not just about playing school, so to speak. And so it has a lot to do with the focus and the love and the concern about the success of your own child and their future life. So you're willing to really pour into it in a way that if it was done with another child from a different school system, they'd probably excel as well.
Okay. Well, let's talk about what it looks like. I mentioned maybe it's going to school in your pajamas and doing all of your work laying on your couch. With your TV on the background, and that's probably not exactly reality, but tell me what it looks like. So Rachel, kind of explain what your day begins to look like for people instead of leaving to get on the school bus every morning.
We get up, have breakfast, but most of the time then, in a sense, it's not as much on the couch. Mom prefers that we work out at the table together, and that normally the morning is spent doing school. Every Monday we have goals where it goes over what we did the week before, what we need to get done this week. And it pretty much, most of it is, by the time it's high school, 7th grade, we start doing it more on our own. And then it's typically the Mondays that we get back, we connect with Mom, we go maybe spelling tests, math tests, what's needed. But then the rest of the week, it's pretty much up to us, and that's where the self-discipline comes in, where it's really up to us to get up on time, to get it started by a certain time every morning. And pretty much then you get up, you start it, and we try to keep it out in the open. Typically, we don't do it down in our rooms because Mom doesn't want to have the temptation there to close the door and start playing. And she just wants to make it where we are out in the open and we can settle down and focus so we can get a good amount of school done in the morning. And I remember when I was little, I could get up early and have my schoolwork done by 10 o'clock in the morning, and I'd have the rest of the day to play. And it was really nice because I could do it on my own time. And now it's something where if I pace myself, I can get it done pretty early in the day, and that's something that I really like. If just pace myself to get up early and get it started then.
Well, Shauna, I'll have you talk a little bit about what your day looks like, but also what is it like having Mom and Dad as your teachers and the ones that hand out your grades?
Oh, well, the way most of our day goes is we have several subjects that we do in our schoolroom where we have our desks and things, and we do several subjects on there with the chalkboard and everything, which is kind of an old school setting. Other schoolwork we have to do on our own. Sometimes we prefer to do it in the open, like Rachel was talking about. Sometimes it's better to do it that way so that you can stay away from the things that might distract you or keep you from getting your schoolwork done. Another nice thing is sometimes we can get our schoolwork done early if we pace ourselves, like she was saying as well in the morning, if we can get started. Some of our subjects we can get done quicker that way if we just change our time schedule every once in a while. So if we have an activity that we need to do in the afternoon, then we can wake up earlier and try and start our school right away so that we can get our things done at the time we need so we can go to the activity. So that's some really nice flexibility that we have that allows us to do other activities. As far as having parents for teachers, well, for one thing, a lot of our subjects that they pick, several of them, especially as you start getting into the high school level, are self-taught, like textbooks or DVDs or such, or other classes that you're taking. But as we're younger, it's definitely that way. personally, I see it as an advantage because all the things that they've been taught, like I was saying earlier, in their lives, they can bring down and teach to us. They can teach those things through them, like the devotion that was being talked about earlier. The devotion that they give into their lives, they can bring into our lives as well, so that we can learn through their experiences that they've had.
Now, this wouldn't work if you didn't have a good relationship with mom and dad, right? And we hear that often, that the teenage years is a time where teenagers are really battling with what mom and dad have to say, and they really don't want to listen to what their parents have to say. But you have to have a good relationship with mom and dad in order for this to work. Is that right?
Yeah, well, one of the things that that we've taught, and not just something that we blindly followed, but that we've learned, that I've learned personally for myself, is a worldview that surrounds everything that you look at, and it changes how you relate with everyone, including parents. So when you come in this mindset back then, I mean, like the biblical, the Christian mindset, then the relationship could be totally different than the one that you might get otherwise. So that has a lot to do with the relationship that we have with our parents and that they have with us.
Okay. Good answer. Disadvantages, I have to hit on some of these because I want to hear what you have to say about them. One big one that I hear is homeschooled students don't have those opportunities that other students might have if they're attending a public school. That be competitive sports, that might be participating in a high school drama, a play, or competitive speech, whatever it might be, an extracurricular activity. So Rachel, go ahead and tell me what you think about that.
I haven't seen actually that as being much of a problem, because it's amazing how many homeschool opportunities are coming up, that because we've got, for example, 2 homeschool choir, at least 2 that I know of, homeschool choirs in Lincoln. We've got several drama groups, sports. So in that sense, you're dealing with other homeschoolers, which is really nice that you can relate to them when you're working. There are a lot of sports opportunities. And sometimes if the parent is willing to, in a sense, let someone else take care of their kids' education for the sake of letting them play in sports, that's really up to them. But I've seen opportunities for homeschool students to do those extracurricular activities even more, because it is something where homeschool students are asking, can we do this? And it's amazing how many opportunities there are more opportunities to do that. Because, for example, we're in the debate group, homeschool debate group. I'm in a homeschool choir. My brother does homeschool basketball. And there's a lot of opportunities. I have friends who do homeschool volleyball. There are the girls' basketball team. There's a lot of various opportunities, friends who play soccer, in drama group. There are a lot of those opportunities that are in the homeschool community. And in that sense, it's really nice to have where you're around homeschoolers who can relate to your situation of being at home. It's not like you're the alien in the public school who's from the planet homeschool type. And in that sense, it's really nice to see all these opportunities for us to be able to do those activities.
Okay. A couple of the other disadvantages that you hear is really the socialization skills, not being able to develop social skills. And then finally, another reason that's mentioned is that homeschooling may not provide the necessary structure or balance to prepare a child for real life situations. That child leaves then the home for the first time to go to a public school setting or a private school setting in college. And they're faced with boom, all these things, and they don't have the way to prepare themselves for that. So how would you answer that, or in response to some parents with those concerns, Deb?
Of course, that's, again, if you take on homeschooling, it becomes the parent's responsibility to prepare for those issues and not to neglect those. But as you note, that homeschooling parents are normally so concerned that that's not an issue. I would say that, and have said for a long time, that in terms of the socialization or preparation for real life, that in one large sense, homeschooling prepares them for life better, in the sense that you and I, since graduation, have never ever been in a situation where we are only with people exactly our own age, day and night. And homeschooling gives these students a chance to interact with kids of all different ages. For example, our debate and speech group is kids competing against each other from ages 12 to 18 and respecting one another and doing a very beautiful job of it. Many of them are babysitting, are taking care of younger siblings, are spending time with grandparents, are interacting at little part-time jobs with people of all different ages. And that's real life socialization. So I would say they do come out very well prepared. And if the parents do take it upon themselves to make sure too that they've built in a real biblical worldview, talk about the different beliefs that are out there, not just your own, but also examine and weigh it and compare it with the other things that are out there, that child can go out very, very well prepared. In fact, in some cases, better socialized for real life than to be sheltered in his or her own age group.
Okay. Well, we don't have a lot of time left, so I want to make sure that I get some of these out. If you're going to make a decision at your home to homeschool your children, here's some things to consider. There's 9 things. Making the decision to homeschool is usually very difficult, so here's 9 things to consider. Time commitment would be the first one. Homeschooling tends to take up a lot of time in your day. It is more than just sitting down with books for a couple of hours. There are experiments and projects to be done, lessons to prepare, papers to grade, field trips, park days, music lessons, and the list goes on. Personal sacrifice is the other one. The homeschool parent has little personal time or time alone. If care is not taken to set aside time for yourself, it is easy to never have time alone because the parent and child are basically together 24/7. Financial strain. Homeschooling can be accomplished very inexpensively. However, it requires both a lot of times parents to be home and not working. Socialization, more attention will need to be given to getting your children together with other students, as we just talked about. Household organization, housework and laundry still have to be done, but it probably won't get done first thing in the morning. And so just not being a stickler for the spotless house. Both parents in agreement. Is your child willing? A willing student is always helpful. 1 year at a time. It isn't a lifetime commitment, so that's something else to consider. Most families should take it 1 year at a time and then reassess. Intimidated by the teaching. We've talked about this just a bit. If you can read and write, you should be able to teach your children because you can learn the curriculum with your child. A couple of more things to consider. I want also to use it to say if a family member wants to get started and they're interested in home education, the first step, they have to submit a form right to the Nebraska Department of Education.
Yes, and that would be a Rule 12 or a Rule 13. Rule 13 was the original. And if they have questions, again, this is a service that NCHEA would provide. We'd be happy to help you to know. You can call me or or email the NCHEA at alltel.net and get information on how to get started. Our convention's coming up March 30th and 31st. Again, there are classes specifically designed to those people toying with the idea of home education. And usually you'll find a homeschool mom or 2 or 3 that would be willing to take you by the hand and bring you along and help you personally as well.
Okay, and that website is www.nchea.org, and there's a lot of helpful information on that website as well.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so we just have 1 minute left. So Deb, just in finally, if a parent is listening thinking that might be for my family, how would you suggest that they get started?
Oh, I guess I'd suggest that they start praying about the commitment, thinking about it, talking with the spouse, getting on the same page, and then preparing the relatives, and then preparing to look for curriculum, and preparing the child for the benefits in relationship within the family of homeschooling, and the excitement of learning, that possibly if that child has been turned off by certain educational settings, that they can get excited about learning, and prepare to be flexible, because that's a key to success.
Great. Deb Badir with the Nebraska Christian Home Educators Association and 2 homeschooled students. We were glad that you could join us for this edition of Consider This.
Consider This is an issues and information program produced by UNO Television. More information and program archives can be found at unotv.unomaha.edu. If you'd like to share your comments about this show, call UNO TV at 402-554-2516 during regular business hours.
The 10th season of Consider This is brought to you in part by From the Top, a national program showcasing the musical talents of young people. From the Top can be heard on KVNO Classical 90.7 each Saturday at 6 p.m.